Hello. So for my final project, I went to the ocean and I explored how my ecological identity was impacted by diving and somatically exploring and placed in the ocean my embryonic, ancestral, mental, evolutionary, menstrual, and emotional bodies. I didn't mention all of these in my paper because initially my research question was just for the embryonic, ancestral, evolutionary, and menstrual. And for another class, I explored different bodies with a different research question. But for this presentation, I'd like to combine all of the bodies because there was a common thread that I found throughout them. And I also made body maps. I mapped my experience in the body through a map, and I'd like to show you all of those so that you can kind of see similarities and differences in this kind of thing. And then when I finished my research, which included diving and also exploring these bodies on the shore, I made a sculpture that for me encapsulates some of the insights that I found from this experiment. So I want to first reference ecological identity and where that comes from. In one of our first readings in the class, Deep Ecology, Living as If Nature Mattered by Sessions and Duvall. They mention a lot of different eco-psychologists and within that paper they mention Arne Nass and their coining of the term ecological identity, which is for me been such a deep inspiration and something I've returned to throughout the entire semester, and I found a lot of deep inspiration in through deep ecology, and has been something I have been exploring with to include into my capstone project next semester. So needless to say, it was something really present and that effortlessly I wanted to explore in my project. Along with that, I wanted to bring in ecofeminism also into the project, and in one of the ecofeminism readings, the week that we had the option of exploring different type, eco-psychedelics, ecofeminism, queer ecology. One of the readings that I read was The Quilt of Ecological Feminism, and this reading was an interview with a woman, and her name is Karen J. Warren, and she in the interview, she speaks about radical ecofeminism and what that means. And there is a quote that I don't have written down. It is in my paper, and what she really is speaking on is the exploration of ecology in a very radical and different way than maybe the science has for so much of what we know and see research-wise. And this quote mentions having to dive to the bottom of the lake and see from a different perspective to really be able to get the full picture. And I think that so often we can, it's so much easier to identify with the soil and the trees and the air, and as currently in our evolutionary process being land animals, we see that more, and can maybe relate to that more. And we're not swimming in the ocean, we're walking on the soil and the rocks, the stones. And so I think, I feel that the ocean can be left out in many important conversations, and it is my passion. And so that when she was speaking on this like shift of perspective, this radical shift in perspective that is needed, it really inspired me to explore that, not only at the shoreline of water, but also going into the water. And it's like through evolution we have became land animals and developed lungs that breathe air, and not, we've released our gills that can breathe underwater. So we don't really get that experience often unless we know how to scuba dive, or if we're free divers and can hold our breath for a really long amount of time. Then we can get a slight glimpse of what it's like in this world that is what we came from and gives us life and sustains all life, yet is so like comparative to outer space. Like we have an entire outer space on the earth, in the ocean, and it's so unexplored. And I feel that through bringing this perspective in, it can be really powerful and something that a lot of people don't experience. And so then getting to share insights, I think can be really impactful and feels really important in ecological conversations. So along with that, in a reading, The Skill of Ecological Perception by Laura Sewell, which she also, like, within that writing, quotes Fox, and which is another person that we read in this class, but where she references him isn't in the reading that we read. It's in a different reading. But within this writing, The Skill of Ecological Perception, she kind of goes into these different perceptions, and we had like a nature practice with it that really like connected to it. And in this project, I felt really inspired to bring in, which also ties into the quilt of ecological feminism, Laura's description of depth perception. And really similar to what Karen Warren was saying, Laura speaks on depth perception, but where Warren kind of gave this very like physical example, going into the ocean, looking, exploring from like in the lake, under the water. I feel like what Laura Sewell was pointing towards is a depth within ourselves. And so often when we somatically explore, we're exploring in placement, or we think of our body, we think, okay, this is my physical body. But I feel like bringing in the embryonic body, the emotional body, the ancestral body, the menstrual body, then I am stepping deeper into depth perception and exploring my perception beyond the normal perception that I mostly feel I move in the world with. And so I think that, what Sewell and Warren are saying couples so amazing together in a research project. And so those were two big inspirations that you can probably see within what I researched and explored. So when I explored these questions, what I found, that's my lunch. What I found is that there was this commonality between many of the bodies I was exploring within the womb of the ocean. This insight more came in the ocean as opposed to on the shore. But the insight that I had, which my mental body really was able to thread together and be like, oh, yeah, is that so many of these bodies, I started out as a little egg or a little particle or bunched up and, you know, not necessarily contracted, but just like very tight and like, you know, together. And then, you know, slowly it was like I felt, you know, my body like growing gills to breathe, or fins or tails, or, you know, like in my mother's womb, like starting to form little fingers and hair coming out of my head as I'm like growing and developing, and or, you know, like in the menstrual body, like starting with menstruation, and like and where it's very internal landscape. And then as I began, it was like I discovered this cycle that existed within each of these bodies, and slowly I would, you know, open or, you know, stretch out, or just feel this like moving and expanding and heart opening, and like feeling like more of an exploration staying anchored within me, but what is also around me and outside of this vessel, or outside of the ancestral body or the menstrual body, and kind of engaging more with what is around me that also is within me and is me. And then slowly, it's like I began to kind of close again, or experience like a roughness, or decomposing back into the ocean, or in my luteal, for instance, which is a phase of the menstrual cycle, like feeling the tension and like the descent, and like this theme of like returning back to the ocean, even though we crawled out onto the shore and had lungs and became land animals, or returning back to, or realizing once again our ultimate connection with source, and with this primordial womb that we always have this umbilical cord too, but sometimes we forget. And so that really inspired this piece that I made, which now I will show. And this piece I made out of air-dried clay, and then I painted it with my blood, and my menstrual blood, for a couple reasons. One being that my menstrual that I explored the menstrual body, so, and also like my deepening my relationship with my body, with my womb, with my blood, as a way of decolonizing my body and my mind as a woman. When I initially took this journey, you know, a couple years ago, it really did expand my ecological identity, to really intimately include the water, and like realize that like I am the ocean, and I am the watershed, and I am the springs, and I am the well. And so yeah, I felt that painting it with my blood not only brought in another aspect of radical ecofeminism, but also really is such a potent and sacred representation of where the ocean really lives within my body, and as living, birthing waters, which, you know, the primordial womb, the primordial ocean, and the ocean itself birthed me. And you know, as a little fish, or whatever the heck we started out as in the ocean. And within this sculpture, I want to bring in another reading that we read, which is The Nature and the Human Soul by Bill Plotkin. And it's like one of the first chapters, and he talks about like the medicine wheel and this kind of cycle of life that you can see in so many ancient traditions, and they all kind of have this commonality. Even though there might be practiced in a different way, there seems to kind of be something universal that all of these different indigenous cultures were tapping into and experiencing, and then bringing ritual and ceremony into their ways of life. And when I was reading that, I was like, this is like also like the menstrual cycle, and like I relate to my menstrual cycle through a couple different maps, and that is like one of the ways that I have deepened my relationship with my menstrual body. So yeah, that's kind of what came to mind when I realized, oh, like there's this cycle that I'm experiencing in all these different bodies within me. And I wonder if I can make a sculpture that kind of encapsulates more of this this cycle than specifically one body and the cycle of one body, since there was this common thread throughout them all. So you can see here, it starts here. It's going to look backward and because, it actually goes this way, like this. But it starts here, and this is like a little egg, or like, releasing the egg in menstruation. And here is kind of like growing out, growing fins or developing fingers. And then you can see there's like this like wave like shelter here, and this could maybe represent, like, for instance, in the menstrual body, the follicular phase, where for me, I still feel a little tender, like I'm a little shoot of growing into a flower, but if you step on me, like, I'm fragile. And like so, like, or in the womb or in the ocean, where like there's still this protection and something holding and covering and protecting, which then kind of grows in here is kind of like the shoreline, and like developing, evolving out, crawling out of the ocean for the first time, and beginning that evolutionary process of developing lungs to breathe air. And you can kind of see, when you look at it like this, that it kind of like goes up, and but also represents an umbilical cord. Even though we became land animals and no longer could breathe underwater, this is a placenta kind of thing, but it's like we still have this connection to the ocean always, and it's where we came from. And spiritually, like, it and physically, it still lives within us. So we didn't lose that connection just because we don't breathe water anymore. And also, I think that it's really cool, just a little fun fact, that like the embryonic fluid in our mother's womb that held and protected us and developed us is like 87% of the makeup of the ocean. Like the minerals and the content are really similar, which is just so amazing. And then here is kind of like descent, and kind of going back into the crevices, or the stormy, rough waters, or going deeper, like with the ancestral bodies, for instance, like really going deeper within ourselves as we then fertilize life, and so yeah, this is my little project, little sculpture that I made. And then I also wrote a little poem, and that trying to encapsulate my experience. It's called Primordial Mother. My most ancient ancestor, from you I was born, and to you I return. You are the tides of my womb and bring rhythm to my light-filled veins. Your embryonic fluidity births heaven through my body. Cosmotheandric waves drip down my leg as I sink deeper into the holy darkness of your deep cavern. Safely held and placed with all of creation, destined to union with your song, with your cry, with your moan. You are my tears, my blood, and the source of life. You are my peace dipped in warm honey. You are the mystery of stardust and ecstasy. From you I was born, and to you I return. And that was inspired through looking at these different bodies that I mapped, and then kind of creating a poetic line of insight from each of the bodies. So I'm going to show those now. This is the map of the emotional body, and my video is getting kind of long, so I'm just going to let you use your creation and your intuition to, you know, pull out what you see from these. But this is the emotional body. This is the menstrual body. This is the evolutionary body. This is the ancestral body. This is the embryonic body. And this is the mental body. Thank you for watching my presentation.